Tell you what, if you haven't had a burrito at Cat and Cloud, west side, east side, no matter what, they're good. When you get this nice char on the outside of the burrito,
that's when
the
it's
Maillard flavor just really, it's like it's been toasted just perfect right before third
well,
crack.
now I'm hungry.
Maillard.
What do you guys want to talk about?
I don't know. What I want to know what you guys
Good one.
think about this podcast.
The one we're sitting in right now?
What do you mean?
We haven't really talked about this card system. We've been kind of just rolling with it. And I feel like when I was editing this week's podcast, the one that came out today, I had a lot of feels towards it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we're not aligning on it. Not in a bad way, just in kind of like a, I want to know how it's going. I want to have
What
feedback.
made you feel that way? What were you listening to that made you feel that way?
Wait, let me flip this. What do you want on our podcast? I feel like that's maybe where we could go here.
No, I want to know what he's got to answer my question first. You must answer the question.
That means Chris said something to you that's hurt your feelings. That's why. Get to the bottom of this before you start getting all the employees mad at us, dude.
So, for example, with these cards, the idea behind the cards was to give you guys a space to operate in.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool. You don't have to come up with the topic. I'm going to provide you with the topic. And in case you need some help going on it, there's some questions here.
Right.
You don't have to answer these questions, but like this is the idea of the topic.
Sure.
And I feel like it became into, we have to answer as an owner, how do you stay connected to your team? That's the question. And so it's like just kind of like this idea of.
But what made you feel that way? Or what were you hearing that made you
So
think
specifically the
things were weird?
one I'm talking about is I asked you, like, what's the importance of relationships in business? And it was
What did
like,
I say? Was I
nothing. It was, you guys just were like, cool, we did it in 10 minutes. You didn't even talk on the topic of, like, we are in a specialty industry that involves, connecting
we
with.
talk about Mission Linen.
You're talking about Mission Linen, but, like, there
Remember
was
that?
you
I do
didn't
remember that.
touch on the aspect of, like, well, we deal with growers and what's the importance of those relationships. And I don't know, it just felt like it was a really kind of like a, well, we answered it, we're done. And so, I don't know, it left me feeling weird. And I thought,
like that.
this is a good time to, like, maybe align on how things are going.
Here's how I see it. That was the second part of the podcast, and this is the thing that we traditionally do is we get into it pretty hard on something, and then we try to do a second one, and we're like, yeah, I did it. I blew it. I did it all today. And we have actually a lot to say, but we might have used our like best words on something already.
We squeezed the juice a little too hard.
You
in
squeezed the juice a little
episode
too hard.
1.0.
And if the question isn't comprehensive enough, which I actually don't think, maybe in some cases like that one, because you did have something more you wanted to hear, there was an opportunity.
Sure.
But if the question is something that could be broad after we squeeze the juice too tight, that's what'll happen. And I totally can own that for myself, because you totally engage in this thing and then you try to switch gears into another thing. But what happens for me is there's a shit ton of stuff happening at work that requires a certain kind of brain space. This is just me, right?
Yeah.
This is how I work. Then there's this podcast, which we make happen and I care about and like, and is very adaptive. The best part of the most consistent thing about it is the card. Otherwise, right, you kind of are like, and the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's kind of like, are we doing it inside today or outside? None of this detracts from it.
No, not at
But
all.
I would say there's opportunity for it to be more. And I also, and I think both of you, maybe not true, are so busy with some of the things we talked about in the episode prior to this that I'm not worried about adjusting it. I'm just worried about trying to do or focusing on trying to do a good job with what comes to the table.
Yeah.
So the first part of this conversation, what I said, we squeeze the juice too tight, and then it's like I just don't really have the prompt doesn't get me deep enough. Sure, you maybe have an opportunity there. And then the nature of the beast is like, yeah, sure. It'd be really cool if we had some ways to feel like we were able to engage the audience through what I'm talking about and have some asks and pull them back in.
Yeah.
That would be, I think, on a group, and it could be on you, but I don't expect you to come up with like the A to Z details, like, do we have an intro? Do we want, like, we haven't talked about this stuff. Do we talk about and get people to come look at our website to try to get some stuff because they actually think it's cool? Like, what are we going to do with the whole podcast? Great question. I don't have a lot of energy to help right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I don't think about it.
From my perspective, I have always, the fact that I'm sitting here feels weird to me because I have always not wanted to interject myself.
But we need help.
Sure. It's always been something where it has always been it always been a strong you two thing. It's always been a strong Chris and Jared thing, and that is I think some of the magic of it because of how well you guys can communicate to one another. And so that's where I've felt worried about interjecting myself or trying to guide the conversation.
You're only making it better by being here.
Great.
True.
I think the prompts are great. Sometimes we miss the mark, like Jared said, and then sometimes, it doesn't mean it's a bad prompt. Like you're like, you guys didn't talk about this, that, and it's like, well, we just weren't thinking about that at that particular time.
Yeah.
It's not that it's not important to us. It's not anything. It's just a big question.
Yeah.
Where do you go in and how deep do you go?
Yeah.
You could record a month of podcast straight on how to navigate relationships. Or
you go as deep as you want to know.
I think you being here and being able to ask questions in real time is not necessarily it's definitely not derailing the conversation.
Sure.
It's just adding a richness because you get to be curious in real life rather than just leaving us to do whatever we're going to do.
Sure.
Well, and there's a new page turn with that as well because we know each other. The antithesis of what you're saying with us knowing each other so well is that
you can maybe
we know where we're going a lot of the time without trying to necessarily go there. And because of that, you as an individual and myself will be like, dude, I've already said this like 20 times. So it doesn't take away the poignancy of it in the context of the question sometimes, but you might not go as deep as you want because I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk people's ear off and say the same thing in a different way for the umpteen thousandth time. And I actually don't think we do that as a podcast, but I do think I feel that way occasionally. And I think that's what's been a struggle for both he and I over the years since it's been since 2015, 16 when we started this thing. As we've evolved, is it's like the core of this whole thing still comes to our company values and some personal values that sit, very similarly aligned to our company. And it all kind of revolves back to that and our ideals and the ethos. So those don't change a lot. And there is infinite things to say about them in unique ways based on day-to-day things. Those day-to-day things, though, aren't always top of mind. I'm a single dad, try to keep a house in order, try to help run a business and keep myself healthy and keep, that's to me is a really overwhelming thing. So I'm learning to try to manage that and engage here, so you're really helpful in that way. And I think you and this is a project and we could probably go deeper and further in a lot of different ways where you'd be extremely helpful in making this more valuable. I wouldn't task you with that right now.
I think where this came from was, again, asking about the cards and how can I put more intention into them. Or at least get your guys' point of view on them, just so that, because I know, Chris, you really enjoy going deeper. You really enjoy you really enjoy the interview type situation.
Yeah.
And these cards are me asking the questions without being there, without being like, go deeper on that.
That's why I think you here is the best way to do this podcast. I mean, when we were talking about relationships with your manager transitioning into being a leader and you asked the question, what was your first experience being a manager and where did it go wrong? That's the perfect question.
It's a great question.
That leads to a story that I never would have told if we were just left with
maybe
the
even
card.
thought about.
Yeah, never would have thought about it.
Yeah.
So that's where I think having an individual human doing that kind of interview thing is just super beneficial because like Jared said, at the core of all of these things, a lot of it boils down to the same 5 cultural elements. So it's really
That's the reason why you open up the card and be like, we've talked about this before, haven't
exactly.
we?
That's why every card, it feels like I've read it before. When I haven't, it's a different question.
It's a different
just
question.
Rooted in the same fundamental concepts. So to have someone help guides us through it is super valuable. That's my perspective.
I've also been worried throughout this whole process of asking those things, asking a question that's on level. I speak with my hands and I speak with visuals a lot, so I'm going to start using numbers. Like asking a question that's on level
Michael's
2 when you guys
visuals.
are on level 10 or something like that, to where it's just
I
like
appreciate you thinking we're on level 10. We could probably not.
What do you mean by levels, though?
it's the as we were just talking about in the last podcast, where it is a question that like is important to a frontliner versus a question that is important to an owner. It's just different perspectives, sort of thing. If that makes any sense. Trying to ask the relevant questions to somebody that is, above me in a position. If that
We're
makes
just not
sense.
above you.
I don't think
we just
above
happen
is-
to
No,
be here
I'm not
before
saying
you.
that's accurate. I'm just
Yeah.
saying like that's a fear of mine to where
Well,
it's
and I
just
appreciate
like
the perspective. I think it's
Yeah.
a normal human perspective to assume that. The thing is that we talked about it in the last podcast. Chris talked about it too. Well, whether it's the last one or whenever it comes out, but
up for
Chris
me.
and I, inherently are not any more special than anybody else in this company,
sure.
right? Everybody here technically could figure out how to open a business with its own values and do every single thing that he and I did. We weren't trained to be business owners. We did invest time. So I think when I hear that, I'm like, sure, we have earned the right via time tenure, via mostly mistakes, and the ability to pay attention and to learn, earned what we have and bring people along with us, earned what we have in this company. But that doesn't make us more special. It makes us determined. It makes us humble enough to and adaptive, like it makes us all of these things. What it doesn't make us is better or different, maybe different actually than some people, but not more or less able. I mean, I grew up hail of poor. I am a white male, so we can assume I have some form of privilege just like that. But like, I didn't come from a place where it was like, someone caked me out and I started a business because I could buy a business and kill it, and like invest all this time. It was all bootstrappy in some capacity. So I guess when I hear you say that, I'm like, I associate as best I can whatever conversation that comes to the card. I try to form it in such a way. That's why I think a lot of things I talk about sound broad so that anybody can grasp the concept.
Yeah.
And I don't try to grab it and put it specifically to an owner, because what I'm talking about, I've experienced literally from day one through where I'm at now, and the concepts don't change. Like you said, the concepts are still applicable. I just expect people to be like we were and be like, this is how it's applicable to where I'm at now. And that's your work to do as the person listening.
Yeah.
And that's what I want. I would dream of everybody who works with me. This is a pipe dream because this is where I have to be a leader and help. But I would hope that everybody who works with and for me and this company assumes that and does that work themselves as well.
Yeah.
And that's actually something I need to learn to not do, because I can't assume everybody can do that or is interested in doing that.
I think the other thing too is when I'm asking questions, I'm trying to put myself in the listener's ears. That's
You're very
weird.
good at that across the board, though.
Trying to, and for me, it's like, am I asking a question that's big enough? But then I ask a question that's too big.
There is no
And
such
so-
thing.
Well, right, but this is the thought process that goes through my head.
Yeah.
And then it's because for us, we have this content mission of like trying to create stuff that is in service of others. We
Sure.
want other people to be able to learn and grow. And Nico has a really big truck.
Diesel, baby.
So I'm thinking of that. And that's where I feel like I want to align more on where it's just like, I will ask this question with this perspective, but you guys will be coming at it from a different perspective. And I want to make sure.
I mean, that's great, though, because that's what a
Yeah.
conversation is.
Yeah, exactly.
Two or more people engaging in different perspectives. And, thinking.
Connection?
When you're
What?
talking about thinking from our listener's perspective,
I think that was a Webster
there
dictionary, by
is
the way.
no one kind of cat and cloud listener, right? If
Yeah.
I don't think we have a certain archetype. If I was gonna have to pin down our archetype, I would say it's people who
Nailed
are
it.
like interested in being better than they were, learning and growing in some way.
And maybe they find us slightly entertaining.
And some of those people are probably, a good portion of them are probably somehow affiliated with the coffee industry, but I think some of them are baristas, some of them are business owners, some of them work in the service industry, some of them are just interested in culture in general, and there is no one perspective of those people. So I think if you're just simply being curious, you're about as close as anyone could be to a fan or a listener. You just happen to work here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And we have a long-standing relationship of
Yeah,
knowing us since we were those people.
So I would
that
say
was
that
talking
if
about.
you have a
Yeah.
curiosity around a certain thing, there's probably a pretty good chance that through the conversation about said topic, a lot of different people are going to get a lot of different types of value from it. And
Yeah.
like Jared said, it's up to the listener to distill what they're hearing and put it to work or not in a way that works for them.
How do you think? You talked analytics last time, baby.
Baby.
Analytics, baby.
Okay, Beard.
Do you have any? Man, I just saw. I heard his story because I'm one episode from finishing. I heard his story last night. And did you finish it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, touching story.
Very.
Analytics, baby. What do we got? Like, what do people say? I know you write. You ask people to give, to ask questions. Do we ever fish?
Well,
What do they want from? What do you want from me, dude?
That's the thing. We did a Q&A.
Yeah.
Like I posted on social a few weeks ago about like, hey guys, like, hey, do you have any questions for the podcast? And then like we were scrolling through them, and you were like, who even listens to our podcast? Like, what are these questions? And so that in the crux is where I find myself, to where it's finding the bridge of people asking like the seemingly simple questions. Not that everyone's asking simple questions, but it's just like, bridging the two worlds to where it's like you guys are asking this question, but what that question, the heart of that question is really like one of these 5 main value things that we always talk about. And how it's like service, how you serve your guests is really the most important thing. And it's kind of that weird in between to where it's just like, yeah, we have these analytics. We have these people who are constantly being like, what's your brew recipe for this? And it's just like, you can talk about brew recipes all day, but do your guests feel cared for when they come in? Are you just a home barista? How do I bridge those two worlds? And that's where I'm trying to ask how you guys are feeling about things. How are these cards helping? Is there any feedback for me in that scenario?
No, I go to problem solving with that one. I go to, okay, what are the opportunities? So I wouldn't call it I wouldn't say there's something specific for you. What I'm hearing, I didn't read those, by the way. Maybe you two did.
Yeah. We
what
looked
I'm
at
hearing
you
as
were
one
at
example.
You were
is
at an
that-
appointment.
Yeah, I totally. But I have, whether it's Mark or maybe an opportunity for people that they actually maybe do want to see he or myself get into that stuff. Like maybe there's a fun opportunity. I mentioned, and I did it the other day, right? I was dialing in
The live, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, hey, I'm going to dial in these 3 Kenyan coffees to decide what's going to be our next 1 or 2 single origins on our menu.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this whole program, and it's going to be a thing. But
whole program.
It's a program.
it's a program called Single Origin Coffee. Ever heard of it before? It's my new live podcast. But I was like, what happens if I throw this on live? Because I'm going to be doing this anyway, and I'm standing here by myself. Maybe I can include some people, and I'm going to redistribute manually because I just want to redistribute manually, and I don't want to grab these tools. Yeah, and that was it. But, I mean, maybe we're just seeing an opportunity for us to have a little bit of fun and engage people in that way. Maybe you asked, hey, would you do this again? Was it fun? And I was like, yeah, actually it was. I mean, I got to see and talk to literally people from all over the U.S. and the world.
Oh, yeah.
Briefly. I got to involve our team a little bit. All right, bring Dulce, bring some people on. Kelly jumped on. It was engaging, and it was something that wasn't terribly hard, and it falls in line with work that we need to do anyway. So maybe it's an opportunity. That's all. So if somebody's asking for that, cool. Maybe there is a way between Mark and myself or Dulce or whoever to answer some of those questions in a format like that does feel like a waste for this podcast. And I wouldn't say that to slight anybody who's out there who wants to talk about that stuff, but the audience we are hitting is broader. And to your point, us giving you an espresso recipe or any sort of recipe or any sort of specific way we do things is cool. It's not actually going to help you as an individual be better at any of the work that you're about to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure Chris would argue this. There's 1,000 trillion different recipes you could follow on the internet for any sort of coffee, and most of them are going to result in something around the ratio of 1 to 2 or 1 to 1.5, and there's usually a time frame that's almost the same, between 2 and 4 minutes, closer probably to 3. And unfortunately, for everybody who wants to geek out, those 10 to 15 seconds that so-and-so who's the champion did with 2 filters is not going to make you the champion. It's just another way of brewing coffee.
Well,
it's still fun, but it's just like, that's not the point.
of.
See? So, I mean,
well,
it can be fun.
I agree with pretty much everything that you're saying. That all of these brew recipes for coffee live in this really narrow window, right? The difference between them is so small. And where I'm coming from is the fun part isn't knowing the recipe.
It's
the
doing it
fun
yourself.
part is figuring the recipe out.
Using your mouth to actually get better at this thing.
Yeah,
I totally agree too.
It's not like,
Good
I
point.
need to have
Great
Jared.
point.
I need to have Jared's recipe. It's like, no, I'm gonna go on the adventure and find my own recipe.
Right.
Like,
What do I love?
What do I love? It's Jesus, and that's where I was frustrated with some of the questions. I think there were a few things wrong with the questions. One, Instagram is not the best place to get thoughtful questions. Not because the people on there, but because the format in
too
which you
short.
have to type your question, it's so short.
Yeah, you
know,
have to
even if people
sum up
have
something.
something deeper, they have to edit in their head, or it's like, what can I fit in this little box?
Yeah, and that's a challenge.
And that's really, really tricky,
Yeah.
right? And then you've got that mixed in with the more kind of coffee specific stuff, which again, the podcast isn't the best place to tackle this. It's not really our highest contribution. Also, that information, like you said, it's just out there, you know. It's
like a million
none
times
of that
over.
stuff is a mystery anymore, you know. So,
but that's even a great answer, and it does feel right. You throw that on a podcast, and what you just said is like, between the two of us, is enough to answer it. It's also not necessarily the most engaging answer for some people. They're like, oh yeah, go figure it out yourself. And it's like, I get it. You want me to tell you how to make the best coffee on earth, but it really comes down to how well you prepare whatever that ratio is. And I'm not doing it for you, and I'm not going to stand there and tell you to like, whatever, wet the grounds perfectly, make sure the water's actually super hot. And like, you know, you don't have to worry about scorching the beans, you know? It's
whereas like if you take that and let's say you took espresso, translated it into a video format, then
Fun.
maybe you get a little more juice out of it, because there are all these, the recipe is not actually what's making the coffee delicious. That's part of it. But then there's all these intangible things that are hard to describe via a podcast that you do as a barista that you would really want to show someone to make your coffee way more tasty.
Well, that's where Insta Live could be fun, right? Because then somebody could just ask you, which they did. They asked me some questions in the moment, right? They type them in and you're like, sick, I can answer that question. Maybe even show you, you know, whether it's Insta Live or not. It could literally just be a video like you said. They're different things, and they're fun in different ways. One of them is a video that you can post and save forever with more control from our side. The other one is more off the cuff and entertaining for a completely different reason.
Right.
And you can still save it, and it still can be valuable for somebody, right? But they're different, right?
Yeah.
You're at the mercy of whoever is at the helm of the video, and then whatever comes in that moment, depending on the day, which could be a shit ton of people, or it could be also, like I was getting spammed like crazy by some girl in Turlock who was awesome, but she was gonna be like, marry me, I want to have your babies, I love you, like just going off. And Kelly was like,
what did you say? Did you say yes?
well, at first it ramped up. Then Kelly was sitting there, and we were like kind of just laughing. I just ended up starting to ignore it. I was like, thank you for all the kind. She's all, I'm screenshotting this. And like, come to the 209, baby, and all this stuff like that. So like I said, a live.
That was me. You saw it? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Wonder where she works. Can't wait to go visit.
Something about, yeah, Chris, you're out there, dude.
209 for
I was
life.
like, oh, you're near
209
Baca.
for
Yeah,
life.
I was like, you're near Baca. They're
Soren's
like,
a
Turlock.
209er too, dude.
Oh, dude, maybe it was. Yeah, anyway.
Maybe it's one of Soren's friends. Maybe you were getting fully spammed for real.
Yeah, but I did get spammed. That person like was just dropping them on the thread, and so you are at the
That's
mercy
funny.
of what could happen, right?
Well, they're 4 different
Yeah.
things, you know.
Oh, he's broken it down. Teachers teach. Let's go.
well, at least in my mind, the way that we have this podcast set up right now, it's kind of 80% knowledge based and maybe 20% is being generous of pure entertainment.
Yeah, we should be funnier.
We could be funnier.
We could be
Get a soundboard?
far more superior in hilarity.
Awesome. A soundboard, if it had quotes from us that we could work into the conversation and make them feel natural. That would
That
be great.
actually
If
be
you collected
amazing.
like some of our best quotes or weird quips and just kind of playing them on the fly, or Mark Gessler hot takes that we could interject into.
Oh my gosh.
Or Jean says the weirdest, funniest shit. when
Actually,
she's just
some of
sitting
that
there.
stuff would be really awesome. If we
That'd
get
be
sound
pretty
bites and
hilarious.
recordings of different hot takes and just like you'd have a little mini commercial break that's our own, but it's like a hot take from Mark.
Throw them in
or
there.
even ourselves. We have plenty of hot
or like
takes.
feed them into the conversation. So it's not super entertainment focused.
Yeah.
A video, like a YouTube video, tutorial style, is also really educational, just in a different kind of way. And I would say that things like Instagram Live, although they can be educational, those are more entertainment focused, where
Absolutely
it's someone's just
entertainment.
sitting there. Someone's, oh man, I happen to be there.
Yeah.
I got a few minutes to kill. I wasn't really planning on diving deep about brewing coffee, but
Yeah.
Jared's there. I like espresso. I'm gonna watch. I'm just gonna tune in and ask some questions. And that's
Yeah.
more of
And
just
only
like
like
a straight entertainment
15
thing.
to 20 people tops at one time were sitting there because nobody really is going to stick around for a long period of time unless they have nothing to do. And most people don't have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So they might
Most
go back and
people
watch it though. For instance, when Chris and I went at the beginning of the pandemic where we had to work like 6 days in a row opening Portola because there was nobody available, I like threw on IG Live and recorded us working bar for whatever and saved it for 20 minutes maybe it was.
That was fairly popular.
And it was popular, but not only that, like I had people responding and shooting me like, hey, I've watched this for 3 hours on repeat, like watching the flow. And that's
That's one where it's more
probably
educational.
It's more
too, yeah.
educational because if you're paying attention to that one, you're not only seeing us mostly killing it, making mistakes a little bit, but like you're seeing us communicate. You're seeing a picture of what it feels like to be in a cafe with us, and hopefully, if you're like the people I asked about, you're saying, "Oh, where could I step up my game?
Yeah.
Where could I be?"
The question that this is coming back to for me is, how do I continue that mission for our content of how do I be of service? How do I help this podcast be of service to the people that are listening? And
This
we've been
isn't
trying
service. I would like it to be entertaining and fun and
Oh
funnier.
yeah, and that comes down to you guys. Like you guys, your connection is that.
It might also
it's
though you
fun
might be
to-
helpful because being able to
Yeah,
riff off somebody. This is our issue again. We're so used to like and maybe actually this is life stuff too. We just gotta like really just lighten our lives up in general. But like I like coming here and expect to take this podcast kind of seriously.
Same.
And I used to feel like I could be a little more all over the place with it.
Mhm.
And I think we could afford to be a little more all over the place at the same time, though, to probably something you might say. And what I believe is that we do want to offer value. And so we need somebody to combo, rein us in if we decide to be in a mood where it's like, I just want to go off so that we can deliver something valuable.
Hot take.
So, I mean, it's for real, like, because and then you also need to be a good editor in case we blow it and say something we're not allowed to say.
Yeah, I
we
would
haven't
say
been able to
about
say that in the past.
89% of our funniest content is completely inappropriate. And it's like when you and I
we
are
are
just
funny as
hanging
shit,
out,
dog.
every time I'm just like, man, we should record this shit.
And we say it.
It would be fucking amazing. And
But it's like comedians. It's like stuff that you don't actually mean. You say it because it'd be funny to hear somebody say it. And then you're like, I don't like mean any of this stuff. It's just funny.
It's actually really funny because
Is it though? It's not funny enough,
so
bro.
funny. Well, when you feel taken care of,
What's
you're
that
put
like?
at
dude?
ease.
Yeah, tell me more, dude.
Wait,
But say less.
I'm thinking back to something I wrote.
feel taken care of.
What was your
I'm
blog
waiting
that
for
we
the
started
punchline to this
last
one.
one you were here?
Oh gosh.
You had a new blog or a different show? It was against.
Oh, it was Keys to the Cafe, not
yeah,
Keys to the Shop.
sorry.
Keys to the
Keys to the
Cafe.
Keys to the
Cafe.
Cafe.
On your blog, Keys to the Cafe.
I was thinking about why good service is so powerful. It's because you feel taken care of. And when you feel taken care of, you're put at ease, your mind is open to other things. Imagine going into a cafe, you give them this big complex order, and then one of those things is wrong. Are you then thinking about, what cool conversation is happening with the people you're with? No, you're like, they screwed up this drink is that drink going to be wrong too? You're not thinking about things that are arguably more important to think about. So here, with this kind of relationship that you two have, it makes me, when I listen to it, comfortable. And then I start processing things. And so it's like that kind of dynamic where it's just like, yeah, it is entertaining.
See, I want to say like 5 things to that, and I can't say any of them on the fly.
So here's what I can say. We haven't found the solution
I'm
to this
scared
yet.
now.
Well, there's things you're actually.
You'll never know.
Yeah, dude. There's things that you're missing, in my opinion.
Ooh, I'm missing something.
Well, we as a company are missing them,
oh,
or
okay.
have the opportunity for them. It's also a very big challenge, and it's something that takes a lot of intention, and it takes that ability to flow and adapt, which is I agree, taking care of people there's something to that, but there's also, if it's entertaining, like there's a level of feeling taken care of when mistakes happen, because they will happen, right?
Yeah.
If it's entertaining, you actually might not be so bummed about a small mistake if it feels awesome all the time, right? So I wrote a long time ago, like, how do we make and showcase content that is engaging, it's entertaining, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's content driven and applicable, like those 5 things. And that's, if all those 5 things are happening, you're hitting all the places. Not maybe not. You could argue, I don't know if I'm right or not, but with those 5 things, and I'd say we do most of that, but we do take it really seriously. And I think with more entertainment, like for instance, like I'll listen to this with my girlfriend, and a lot of it, unless you're in the industry, they're not into, and then they hit these nuggets. So like maybe I'm literally spitballing shit off the fly, right? Maybe we could Huberman Lab it and make sure that like certain points of the content are like broken up in the minutes so that people can be like, I can skip to the part I really want to hear about, which I actually think is Huberman Lab is pretty smart. I don't know if you listen, but he's got too many commercials.
I like the timestamps.
But the timestamps are super helpful in that way. And I'm not saying we're doing a bad job. I actually think we do a good job. I'm just saying, is there a way for us to measure any of those things? I don't know. I know that there's times when I'm for sure less entertaining and more like trying to be really serious about the concept because I'm valuing it.
It's really
and I
funny.
want to come off as a professional.
There's a really fun dynamic that happens every time you guys start reading a card. Chris, you read the card, and then Jared talks for 5 minutes. And
That's
then
because he needs his moment to think. I'm helping.
To think.
Yeah.
I'm all cool. I got to spitball for a sec because he's like,
what do you? I feel like you have something on your mind.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
That's a great question. That's a really good prompt, dude.
Well, you're just sitting there, and
Sounds
I feel
like you got something on your mind. Did you read that book?
No.
No?
Coaching Habit? That's not the Coaching Habit,
Never
is it?
Split the Difference?
No, that's that one, yeah.
I don't know. What are you thinking?
Never S the D, split the difference. That's what I'm thinking.
I mean, I'm thinking a lot of different things.
A lot of people are saying stuff.
I don't know. Dude, I don't know.
It's hard
I
to
don't
be
know.
perfect.
I don't know. We have a podcast. I mean, I don't even know what the fuck to say, dude. You're like asking me this big old question, and I don't even know what I'm thinking. I mean, I'm thinking there are different categories of people.
Sure.
And while it's nice that when we're riffing together, we have the ability to be super funny and have the most ridiculous times ever, it's kind of like, what are we really here for? You know what I mean? What are we doing? And what I would hate for this podcast to evolve into is just a different form of like cat videos or silly Instagram videos that have like millions of views that are undeniably funny and ridiculous, but are adding no cultural value at all. I was talking to Jenny about this the other day because she sends me some funny shit too, and I look at it and I'm like, you know, when you watch TV commercials from the 50s and 60s, and they're just like, man, those are fucking ridiculous. Was everybody in the U.S. just
dumb?
So dumb? Were we so dumb? And
the answer is
I'm
yes.
thinking that in 20 years, everyone's going to look back at all of that stuff and say, people in 2016 to 2040 were just fucking idiots. This is what they spent their time watching. This is what they did. This is what millions of people tuned in and watched this thing. These are the things that more people are sharing with their friends than others. It's like people are literally fucking idiots. They're fucking dumb as fuck. Like, that's what people are going to say in the same way that we're just like, what the fuck was going on in 1955? Like how is this passing for pop culture in America? I know people were smarter than this, or were they? And that's where my original statement like kind of has the weight that it needs to have if we're gonna really dive into this. But that is what I do not want this to turn into. You know what I mean? And if we go too far down this lane that's not ours, it's like, sure, we're funny, but we're not comedians.
Yeah, right, bro.
And,
Speak for yourself.
And there's no way that we're going to be
down
able
at
to
the Comedy Store with Pauly Shore every night
to straight entertain in that way for an hour and a half in a way that people will really, really get value out of it. There's people who have that covered,
Well, I hear you.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with being goofy, but if I'm being really honest, it's like when I'm at my funniest, and I think when you're at your funniest, and
we're not trying to be funny.
Well, we're doing the things that I just said that we have to take out of this podcast because we're going to get fully roasted for it. You know what I mean? And that's where,
not all of it.
And that's where actual comedians have
that's
a
where
pass,
they live.
where that's their zone. They're tapped into this deeper cultural thing. Their job is to comment on culture and say the things that nobody else can say.
Right.
And that's true normally. Now we're in this weird, which I also think is a block of time, where just things are like more clamped down for a lot more people than they ever have been before,
Sure.
And it's just not, for me, it's not the most comfortable time to let those things fly. Not because I don't necessarily think that I could defend my ridiculousness, not because I think I'm being a mean or bad person, but like if we go too far down one road, it could have negative implications for the business,
who works with us.
And
Right,
affect
we
a
gotta
lot
take
of
care of
people's
other
lives.
people.
And that's like, dude, I don't really feel like I want to do that dance right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
But
It's a trip, though. Those little funny things that we're all sending to each other, meme-related little mini videos, like, I think it does say something to what the culture wants, and that's to not feel how it feels out here, which is so much pressure. They want to, like, let off steam, and they're not doing it for themselves, so they're finding it in these dumb little crappy videos all over the place, which I don't think we should lean into.
That might be part of it.
So
the other part of it might be that humans are incredibly easily distracted.
Well, that's true, too.
And
let me see if I can summarize what you're saying.
Good luck, Donnie.
You're afraid of this becoming a
fart joke.
Nothing but just an entertainment vehicle for right now in time.
I'm saying if you're going to listen to two people be funny and just have a good time, there's a lot better people to listen to than us.
That's a good way of saying it.
I'm not saying we're not
That's true.
funny, because there's certain aspects of it, like we can be really funny, but
Sure.
the reality of the situation is
we want to do more than just make people laugh.
Well, no, it's like everybody leans into their highest level individual contribution.
Sure.
Right? It's like everybody has something to share with people, and my thought process is you share your gifts on their highest order, right? There are people who are incredibly funny, and that is their highest order contribution. What makes us interesting to me is we're two friends who found each other through this industry that we both fell in love with.
This is a miracle.
Years later, ended up working together, and from the jump had kind of talked about, well, what if we did things this way? What if we did things that way? What if we had these ideas and we didn't let them go? And then because of a million different circumstances, at some point we're like, we're fucking going to do this. Like, we're going to do this. So, and we're doing it. I was kind of writing on this the other day where it's like, first coffee job is sometime in the early 2000s. By 2013, 2014, I'm already flirting with this business that didn't work out. And then in 2016, we opened up Cat and Cloud's first brick and mortar. And I'm like, at some point, we're just cashing in on this thing and saying, like, yeah, we're going to put rubber to the road and we're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And from deciding to make it happen to where we are now, we've made a million different mistakes that we've learned from along the way. And this podcast is useful because if someone's paying attention and can apply our lessons to their life, they might not have to make all of the same mistakes that we had to make.
Yeah.
And it's not just for business owners. Because we came from a barista background, it's like half of the stuff we talk about is stuff that was going on like when we were working in cafes. Like, what was it like to be a frontline employee? You know, we're not that far removed from it, you know, from
2015, 16, 17, we were doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's this big, huge 10-year run, and then to do this. So it's like if anybody wants to know how to navigate that,
There's some stuff.
Yeah, we're great people to learn from. And going back to what Jared was talking about earlier, we're just the result of putting in day after day, year after year, a lot of energy and intention into one thing, right? It's like we're very focused on coffee and hospitality, and through the different ways that we're able to explore that, whether that's working on the floor, whether that's doing events, whether that's managing cafes, whether that's doing barista competitions, whether that's running wholesale departments or working in marketing departments, all of this knowledge and energy is just along this one line.
Yeah.
And that's where we're getting everything from. We weren't fully funded. We don't have a lot of money. There's no big investment stuff. The business is cut from scratch. You know what I mean? Portola started with a underfunded SBA loan
And a Kickstarter.
that we ran out of. So we did a Kickstarter to finish the whole thing off.
Yeah.
And
That I donated to.
right. And which was amazing to see. And the funny thing about Kickstarter is that you can only really run a successful Kickstarter if you are already somebody of note in a certain community, right?
Yeah.
Because if we had never done the work that we had done prior
we don't get that
and
money.
created the things that we've created already,
You don't have that
whether
you
it's
don't have that track record.
videos, media, yeah, we don't have that track record, and people are like, that's where you get that kind of GoFundMe and Kickstarter burnout towards, you know, everyone's like, pitch in on our thing. It's like, who the fuck are you? Like, who are you? So I don't like to
Who
ask.
are you?
I don't like to ask for things, but with a Kickstarter, it's like, hey, you know, we've tried to do right all these million different ways, engaging with the coffee community in like a million different ways, and now we need help. So if you found value in anything that we've created, like, hook us up and you can be a part of this thing and you get your, you know, little party pack, and that went well. And I'm really proud of that. And I think, again, Jared already said it too, but I'm just going to reiterate, there's nothing inherently special about either of us. We're just about as regular as it gets. And I don't think everybody's highest level contribution is starting a business, but I think everybody has something that they wish that they could do. And my thesis is like, you actually can do that thing, you know?
Yeah.
If you're willing to focus enough for long enough time and not be distracted by all the other bullshit that's going on and get to fucking work, you know? And that's, I don't know, that was like a big tangent from nowhere, but that's where that's what I love about this podcast, is it gives people the inside track on a couple guys' brains who have just done that. And I think that's pretty valuable. Like, I wish I would have had that, because when we were opening and when we were in these initial stages, like, I'd started listening to podcasts a little bit before that.
Yeah.
But the generic entrepreneurial podcast
They're
was
bad.
not geared towards people like you and me.
No, they're
You
VC
know.
investor people.
It's geared,
Vibes.
it's geared towards people who are like, I have an idea, I want to build it up and sell it really quickly,
Yeah.
or I'm like making passive income.
I don't
is, like,
actually
this
really
huge
care. I'm
thing.
trying to get
yeah, I
rich.
don't give a shit. It's like really money focused and not focused at all on the heart and soul of business or being of service to anybody. So it's like, I wasn't getting that, and certainly,
Same.
and I'd be cool to see something now. I haven't really looked, but there's certainly, when we were coming up in the barista world, there were no podcasts or anything focused on how can you be a really awesome employee and do things that are of benefit to the organization while also growing your own career and your own, you know,
Personal
self as a
self?
personal
Yeah.
brand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, those are things, it's all just stuff that you wish you would have had. And that's what teaching is to me. That's really what some sort of mentorship is. So, you know, if we went down a road that's just strictly funny, it's like we could sell ourselves short a little bit.
I don't think
Yeah, Strictly Funny would not be good. Just
Yeah.
like Strictly Bluegrass wouldn't either.
it's exciting for
Hardly
me to
Strictly makes
hear
sense.
where you're at with it, because I agree. Like, this is not an entertainment vessel. Like, the questions that I try to come up with is not just to see your guys' funny hot take. It's because I know you guys have a wealth of knowledge and experience.
No, yeah, I hear you.
And so that's exciting and that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because we had this conversation back at the end of 2021 where I was just like, I feel like we need to do more for the podcast. And you were saying, no, it is what it is. Like, that's the magic of it. We just, like, it doesn't need that much. And so I feel like we had always been at these odds of like, oh, we need to put more work into it. And you would come back at me and be like, no, like, it's perfect what it is. It doesn't need that much. And I think I'm discovering your perspective on that and understanding like where you're coming from in what you do when you sit down behind this mic. From a mental standpoint.
All I need is one mic. That's a Nas line. Well, keep up the good work, huh, Weiser?
You're fired.
Hey everyone, that's the podcast for the week. Thanks so much for listening. If you heard something that inspired you, let us know, or tell a friend. These are the types of connections that are the most important to us and that we seek to create every day. If there's something you heard and you want to know more about, send us an email to podcast@catandcloud.com or head to our website, catandcloud.com/podcast, and let us know. While you're on our site, check out everything we have to offer. Dive deep into one of our single origin coffees or pick up a little treat for yourself. We have something for everyone, so check it out. Also, find us in the usual places, YouTube, Instagram. We're always there sharing amazing things. All right, that's it. Thanks everyone for being awesome. We'll be back next week.